I don't even know if I can review this laptop. I mean, look at these stickers. Who put those on? Absolute travesty. But I might just be able to look past it though, because this Asus ZenBook S16 is one of my absolute favorite laptops of the year so far. And as these stickers alluded to, this is one of the first laptops rocking the new Ryzen AI processors, which I can finally test. Because a few weeks ago I shared my hands-on first look video thingy for the ZenBook S16, but it was an engineering sample and the drivers weren't ready. But wonky stickers aside, this is good to go. You can order one of these now. But should you? Is the new ZenBook S16 worth buying? And does this new hardware live up to the hype? Well, I will tell you, and if you do enjoy this video, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic, and a big thank you to Asus for sending this out for me to have a play with. So before we nerd out over the benchmarks of the new Ryzen AI 9 HX370 with its Radeon 890M graphics and the NPU's whopping 50 tops of AI horsepower, let me give you a bit of a tour, because this is absolutely stunning. This is a 16-inch laptop, a 16-inch 16x10 3K 120Hz OLED touchscreen, no less. 16 inches in this chassis, which is just 11 millimeters thick and also weighs 1.5 kilograms. For a 16-inch laptop, that's about 3.3 pounds in old money, which is around the same as the smaller MacBook Air 15. And while it's not as light as, say, an LG Gram, the problem with a lot of these super duper ultra light laptops is the material they use can come across as a bit recycled cardboardy. But Asus reckon they found the solution, and it is called unobtainium. That's not right, Ceraluminum. Definitely Avatar. They take the aluminium chassis and using a ceramization process, transforms it into a tougher and more scratch-resistant ceramic. So you get the resilience of ceramic with the lightness of aluminium, essentially, and I really, really like it. There's not a fingerprint or smudge in sight, there's barely any flex, very little screen wobble, and it comes in two colors, Scandinavian white and Zumaya gray. The only reason I might go for the gray is it doesn't reflect itself quite as much. Although this actually isn't a paint, it's a different chemical makeup when they go through this process. So it's not gonna scuff, it's not gonna scratch. This may just be one of the best design laptops I've ever seen and used. And also somehow, those crazy cats over at Asus HQ have managed to squeeze in not only a full-size SD card reader, as well as a USB-A, but also a full-size HDMI 2.1, along with a couple of USB 4s here and the headphone audio jack. Look at how much room they've got left with that HDMI port there. That is fantastic. Plus Wi-Fi 7, of course. And you can output to 3 external monitors. I love this design on the lid. We get lovely thin bezels around the screen. All glass as well, no protruding plasticky bezel that you might get on a cheaper laptop, bar this ever so slight lip here at the edge to keep the screen safe. We've also got vents at the top here, over 3,000 individually machined holes to well, exhaust some of the heat, keep it nice and cool. Full-size keyboard, no numpad, which actually I'm pleased to see because coming from my Galaxy Book 4 Edge review, having a numpad there basically offsets everything, so the touchpad, the keyboard was to one side. I can never really get used to that. So massive touchpad as well, but it is all central, which I quite like. This is a diving board design style of touchpads, which basically means it's easier to click it at the bottom than it is at the top, and there's no haptic feedback or vibration. It's not my favorite touchpad in the world, but it is smooth, it's responsive, and I actually do appreciate just the little things, that it is also a 16:10 aspect ratio, matching that of the screen. And you have a couple of gesture options. You can swipe up or down on the left side to change the volume, and brightness on the right, which is pretty handy actually. It means you don't have to lean forward and find the function key. As for the speakers, well, have a listen.
But my entire world is right here in this picture.
They're actually really good. 6 speakers, 2 tweeters, 4 woofers, technically downward firing because they're on the base here, but kind of downward out sort of edge firing. For a laptop this thin, they're actually really good. And then at the top here, we have the 1080p webcam, which also has a 3D IR sensor, so you can use Windows face unlocking, even in lower light, very helpful. So as you can probably tell, very impressed with the design, the chassis, the build quality, but also equally impressed with this screen. It is absolutely stunning. As I say, 16-inch, 16:10, a 3K resolution, so I think 2880 by 1800, really nice middle ground between Full HD and 4K for sharpness versus battery life. Also a touchscreen, also OLED, so you get those really deep inky blacks. blacks and vibrant colors, and also like a 0.2 millisecond response time to make your games and, well, anything feel a bit more instant. We get Dolby Vision. It's certified for Visa's Display HDR 500 True Black standard. We also get 100% DCI P3 color coverage, and I do appreciate you can actually jump into the My ASUS app and change the color profiles. And I recorded just shy of 500 nits of brightness in regular SDR use, and just about 800 nits in HDR, which is very impressive for an OLED display. Yes, Apple's MacBook Pros can peak at 1600s, but that's a mini LED, not an OLED. The only bit of feedback I could give in order to make this an even better screen is perhaps if they could work on the reflections a little bit. So that will possibly be my only bit of feedback for next time. Okay, I've made you wait long enough. Let's talk about these new chips, this new hardware. And in here I have a Ryzen AI 9 370, along with the new Radeon 890M graphics, and also an entirely new NPU, or neural processing unit, giving us 50 TOPS of AI performance. That's trillion operations per second, which in the grand schemes of these companies and their bit of a measuring contest when it comes to AI performance, the Snapdragon X Elites are like 45 TOPS, the upcoming Intel Lunar Lake are around 48, so this technically comes out on top there, although actually right now this does not support the Copilot Plus features from Windows. That will be coming later in the year with an update. In fact, we get most of the good stuff already on here, including Copilot actual chatbot, and also live captions. But we'll come back to the AI stuff in just a second, because if you'll bear with me, I just need to give you a bit of context about these new chips, and also what a crazy year we've been in. Because at the start of the year, Intel launched their Meteor Lake chips, which we've had in a handful of laptops that have come out, and they've been pretty good. Just this summer, Snapdragon have released their X Elite and X Plus series laptops. I've reviewed a couple of them. Click up there if you fancy checking it out. Really, really interesting to see the PC market shake up. And now we have AMD's offering with these new Ryzen AI processors. But however fast this is, and I will tell you in a second, right now I'm comparing it to Intel's current Meteor Lake chips, which came out a few months ago. But just in a couple of months' time, around September-ish, we're going to have their successors with Lunar Lake. So this new AMD hardware kind of comes halfway between the cycles from Intel, goes right up against the Snapdragon X Elite, and of course, we've not even mentioned what Apple are doing with their M3 and upcoming M4. The bottom line is, it's been a crazy year for hardware, and actually it's very exciting, particularly for us consumers, because it means all these companies are being extra competitive and hopefully giving us better products. This ZenBook S16 is one of the first laptops to come with this new AMD hardware, built on their new Zen 5 architecture with 12 cores and 24 threads. But what I'm most excited about is the new graphics. With AMD's RDNA 3.5 architecture, the base model comes with 24 gigs of RAM and also the 10-core Ryzen AI 9 chip, as well as the Radeon 880M, whereas the higher spec version I have here comes with the 12-core Ryzen 9 AI chip, and also the 890M Radeon and 32 gigs of RAM. And with the power mode set to performance, which gives us the chip's full 28 watts, and oddly enough I actually found performed better than the full speed mode, let me show you a few numbers. And for context, let's bring in its closest rival, the Intel Core Ultra 7 155H, and also a Snapdragon X Elite laptop, just to give us a rough picture of how they stack up. And in these tests, the X Elite comes out on top, with the Ryzen AI in close second, and Intel lagging behind. You'll notice though a bit of an anomalous reading with the Geekbench OpenCL, and also a couple of missing tests for the Snapdragon, because right now app compatibility optimization is the Achilles heel of these Snapdragon chips. But what about gaming? Not something you'd typically associate with a thin and light ultrabook like this, but actually over the last couple of years, the integrated graphics have come a long way to the point where they actually compete with some low-end dedicated GPUs. And AMD actually have been right at the top in terms of class-leading integrated GPU performance. So how is this new Radeon 890M? Well, across Hitman, Cyberpunk, Siege, Tomb Raider, and Spider-Man Remastered, we're looking at an average 20%-ish boost over Intel's Arc graphics with the current Meteor Lake, translating to some pretty playable frame rates at Full HD. And in games with FSR, which is AMD's upscaling tech, similar to Intel's XeSS or Nvidia's DLSS, it can literally double your frame rate. Moving away from games and firing up a bit of Blender, to render 500 frames of this Ripple demo, it took 10 minutes and 18 with the new Ryzen versus 14 minutes and 6 seconds on the Core Ultra 7. That's about 37% faster. And finally, while there aren't a ton of AI benchmarks right now, in Geekbench's DirectML test, the Ryzen AI is over twice as fast. And breathe. That was a lot of numbers. Basically, this is very fast. Is it a night and day game-changing difference amount of fast? Probably not, around 10-20% as I say, although in some cases like rendering and AI performance and in some games it is pretty significant, but then again, for context, we're going to get Intel's Lunar Lake chips which will compete directly with this in just a couple of months. But wait, I think what I'm most impressed by is the performance on battery. In fact, running 3D Mark Time Spy, there was like a 1 or 2% difference within the margin of error really. Here you can see my FPS at the top left. This is with it connected to the power. Unplugging it, no change, no sudden drop. The performance of these new Ryzen AI chips in this ZenBook is pretty much on par whether you're running it on battery or connected to the power. Good stuff. My only complaint is when you are playing games or running more demanding programs, it can get quite hot. I actually recorded around 51 degrees Celsius coming out of the vent underneath, which means if you're using it on your lap, it's gonna get sweaty. So much so that my heat-seeking cat decided to make the ZenBook its bed and soak up all that nice warmth. However, this was me using it in the full 28 watt performance mode. If you pull it back to the 15 watt balanced or super quiet modes, then it will reduce the power and you will get a lot less heat. And fair play actually, the fans were nice and quiet throughout, pretty much silent in everyday use and not overbearingly loud at all, even in performance mode. Inside here we have a 78 watt hour battery, which is a pretty good size actually for how thin it is, and the overall battery life is good, if not great. AMD have been a little bit sketchy about their promises for battery life with this new hardware. They basically have just been saying all-day battery life, but that is very vague. I fired up YouTube and let it run overnight, side by side with the Intel-powered MateBook X Pro, which is a smaller 14-inch laptop, but also has a smaller 70 watt-hour battery. Again, lots of variables, but it's just to give you an idea. And the Ryzen AI ZenBook conks out at a pretty average 7.5 hours, with the MateBook lasting around an hour and a half longer. Okay, it's just gone 9 o'clock. I think that'll do for today. I've been working on my review for this, all my notes and benchmarks, but I want to see what the standby battery life is. We're in standard mode, that's how I've been using it. Let's see, it's 3 minutes past 9. We are on, go away, what are we on? We're on 83% battery. So let's come back in, should we say 12 hours? And see how much it drops. Okay. 83%. See you in a bit. And through the miracle of editing, we are back 12 hours later, and what do we think we're on? What's the guesses? 83 down to 79. So for me, with light-ish use, I can get about 10 hours of life from this, which is not bad at all, especially for the performance that we have on tap. It doesn't compete with what you'll get from a Snapdragon laptop. Before we wrap up, just a quick word on AI, because as I say, they are very proud of their 50 trillion operations per second NPU for all your AI accelerated tasks. The problem is there isn't a whole lot that really utilizes it right now. It is much more about future-proofing. You can easily get confused by all this AI marketing spiel from the brands, but essentially what can be offloaded from the CPU or the GPU onto the NPU and accelerated with AI, usually much more efficiently. The main advantage of local AI right now on laptops is improving your battery life. So as more apps and more features take advantage of the NPU, and it's kind of like a chicken or the egg, you've got to have the hardware first for developers to actually optimize their software for it. We should see improvements to battery life and efficiencies over time. This is more of a future-proof thing. And I mentioned earlier, while we do have Windows Copilot, we don't get the Copilot Plus features, which are currently exclusive to Snapdragon laptops until later this year. I mentioned StoryCube. This is ASUS's new app, which is actually pretty neat for sorting your photos and videos, creating memories, as they like to call it, and it uses AI to smartly organize your files and media, which makes it not only much easier to search for, but you can also create highlight reels and videos automatically. So if you do pick one of these up, definitely worth having a play around with ASUS StoryCube. So I was just on ASUS's website here, and you can buy this ZenBook S16 for £1,600 for the entry-level spec, but what I would do actually is go for the higher spec, because it only costs you an extra £100, but you get 32 gigs of RAM rather than a 24. You get a 12-core HX370 rather than the 10-core HX365, and also the more powerful Radeon 890M rather than the 880M. So more RAM, 2 extra cores, faster integrated graphics, for just £100. Overall though, I think it's a terrific laptop. The Ryzen AI hardware may not be a full game changer per se, but certainly we're getting the best-in-class integrated graphics, excellent all-round performance, and in what is probably the best looking laptop of the year so far. So what do you reckon? Tempted? Reckon you might want to pick one of these up? Let me know what you make of the ZenBook S16 in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat. Thanks for watching.